Praise be Jesus Christ and Mary Immaculate. Welcome to this 10th Sunday in Ordinary Time. We're going to read from the Gospel of Mark chapter 3 verses 20 to 35. In the previous chapter, the calling of the 12 is narrated, with Judas Iscariot mentioned as the one who betrayed Jesus. This early note in the Gospel is significant because Judas followed Jesus. He listened to Jesus, and yet he betrayed Jesus. Everyone, even his followers, have a risk of betraying Jesus. Mark shows how Jesus is betrayed, questioning what it means to truly follow him. Following Jesus requires more than just walking behind him. It requires assimilating his way of thinking like Jesus, acting like Jesus. Otherwise, we risk misunderstanding Jesus just as his opponents do. Verse 20, he entered a house and a crowd gathered so much that they couldn't even eat. Jesus moves from the synagogue, a place of worship for the Jews, into a house. Whose house? His house, the Lord's house, the home where people live. It's a place of sharing. Family members come together. They share bread together. They laugh. They cry. They show all of their affections in the home. The home is where we can feel at home with God. The house represents the church, which is made up of those who are inside and they listen to Jesus, and not like the crowds who are outside and anonymous. In a home, no one is anonymous. A crowd gathered. The crowd signifies Jesus' success, but also a limit, as the crowd only comes out of a physical need. Jesus seeks followers who are separate from the crowd, who stand out from the crowd. He moves to a boat, to a mountain, or to a house, so that his true followers can listen to him, partake of him, and assimilate him. The crowd must transform into a people united with him. There is still a crowd outside, so much that they couldn't even eat. What does it mean to eat? It means living. And what you live on is bread. And Jesus is the bread of life. In the next chapters, we will discover that the bread is the Eucharist, and it is doing the will of God that truly sustains us. Verse 21, then his family, hearing this, went out to fetch him. In fact, they said he is out of his mind. What did his family feel that made them go out to get him? The original text in Greek actually says they went to capture him. The verb capture in Greek, krateo, is the same verb that Mark will use for the capture of John the Baptist by Herod and for the capture of Jesus in chapter 14. Why were his family members so worried that they considered him out of his mind? Not only his enemies considered him a blasphemer, but now his own family considered him out of his mind. Then his family. Who are these family members? We hear it in verse 31. It will be said that they are his mother and his brothers. In the Hebrew culture, brothers also could mean cousins. The text ends with Jesus saying, behold my mother and my brothers, for whoever does the will of God is my brother, my sister, and my mother. This indicates that being his relatives, that is, his intimate people, does not depend on blood or rights. One becomes a relative by imitating him, by being like him, by resembling him, by doing God's will and listening to his words. We learn to act like Jesus, to be like Jesus, so that people can see that we are related. By chapter 3, Mark shows us that Jesus had no problem with sinners, with unbelievers, or with people outside the law, but he had significant problems with the highest representatives of the religious and political institutions who accused him of blasphemy, a reproach that could be punished by death. The evangelist shows a clear incompatibility between Jesus and the religious institution, representing a different way of relating with God. Rejected by religious authorities, Jesus creates a new community of believers, a new people who were tired and weary of religious oppression see an alternative in Jesus, and they flock to him, to listen to him, and to be fed by him. They recognize that Jesus has spoken like no one else before. We continue. This man is possessed by Beelzebul. This is the height of the defamation. He who drives out demons is judged to be possessed by a demon. The defamation against Jesus was meticulously planned. The choice of the name Beelzebul is intentional. They didn't just say Satan, they said Beelzebul. Among the many demons people believed in at that time, they chose Beelzebul, the most popular and the most feared of all demons. The name Beelzebul is composed by two words, Baal, which means Lord, and Zebul, which means flies. Bzz, flies, means the Lord of the flies, the primary cause of infections, disease, and all discomfort. According to the scribes, Jesus does not free people. Instead, he makes them more victimized by the devil, since his powers come from Satan, the leader of demons. Verse 23 to 27 says, But he called them and said to them in parables, How can Satan cast out Satan? If a kingdom is divided against itself, that kingdom cannot stand. While the scribes who defamed Jesus did not dare to confront him openly, Jesus summons them to demonstrate the absurdity of their accusation, saying, How can Satan cast out Satan? Satan means the accuser, the divider, the one who separates human beings from God and brothers and sisters from each other, holding everyone as slaves of sin. How can the prince of demons harm himself? If a kingdom divides, it is finished. At that same time, with the parable of the strong man, Jesus invites us not to underestimate the devil, that he is stronger than us, that those who are too self-confident and trust only in their own strength often underestimate the strength of evil and easily succumb to his temptations to divide and to criticize. Pope Francis is very clear when he says, we don't speak to the devil. You don't dialogue with the devil. You don't have a conversation with the devil. Everything that will be forgiven to the children of men, the sins and even the blasphemies they speak. There is no evil, no sin that is not forgiven. Jesus came to forgive sins. God is love and forgiveness, right? He cannot not forgive. The unforgivable sin is knowingly denying the evidence. The scribes lie and deny what is evident. As the highest religious authority of Israel and experts in the scriptures, they know that Jesus' actions can only come from God. But admitting it means giving up their privileges and power. They choose to lie in order to stay in power. Does that sound familiar? Isaiah 5:20 says, Woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who change darkness for light and light for darkness, who change bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. In order not to accept that they are wrong, they refuse to acknowledge that Jesus frees from evil and instead affirm that his work is diabolical. And this is the true blasphemy against the Holy Spirit. Ignorance or fragility will be forgiven, but declaring that Jesus' actions, which have the power of God, are the work of the devil, this is an insult, and this is the result of bad faith. For the evangelists, the true demonic ones, those possessed by impure spirit, are the representatives of the religious institutions, and because they are lying while knowing that they are lying, and that is diabolical. Sin is unforgivable. Sin is unforgivable not only when good is rejected, but also when it is defined as evil, and sinful acts are considered a virtue. What does this apply, or how does this apply to us? In our world today, we face numerous forms of oppression, division, and falsehoods. The call of this gospel passage is to stand firm in the truth of Christ, to recognize the insidious nature of evil, and to trust in the power of God's love and forgiveness. No sin is too great to be forgiven, and no person is beyond the reach of God's grace. Let us therefore commit ourselves anew to being true disciples of Jesus. Let us strive to do the will of God in all things, to seek unity and reconciliation, and to proclaim the liberating power of the gospel with courage and conviction. May we be counted among those who Jesus calls his mother, his brothers, and his sisters, not by birthright, but by our steadfast faith and unwavering commitment to his teachings. God bless you.